We will present this case in Nouadhibou in Mauritania, together with Somelec, which is the utility of Mauritania. Even if this project has been performed in first step by SNIM, which is the mining national company. What we see is that mining companies do not need renewables at first step. What they need is reliable and cost-effective energy. And of course, we are convinced, and we will show you on this example, that this is achievable with renewables. Another thing that is achievable in this case was to put together the mining industry, the utility, and the general policy and development of infrastructures of Mauritania. This what Mrs. Mustafa will develop now.
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about renewable energy in Mauritania. So the main sources of energy in Mauritania is thermal energy. We have more than 60 small diesel plants spread over the country, and hydroelectric from Manantali and Felou dams. The principal electricity suppliers in Mauritania, or producers in Mauritania, is Société Mauritanienne d'Électricité, Somelec, which is in charge of production, transport, distribution, and sale of electricity in urban and suburban areas. It has an installed capacity of 200 megawatt, of 200 megawatt of thermal and 15 megawatts of solar PV and 30 megawatt of wind energy. I put wind energy shaded because the construction of the plant is finished now, but the commissioning tests are in process, and we have only available only 3 or 4 megawatts on the grid. The second electricity producer is SNIM, Société Nationale des Industries Minières, and it produces electricity to satisfy its own industrial activities in Zouarat and Nouadhibou. It has an installed capacity of 126 megawatts and 4 megawatts of wind and 3 megawatts of solar PV at Zouarat. Since 2000, electricity demand is increasing by more than 10% a year. So, and the forecast demand of electricity showed that the mining companies are the most demanding. So to meet this demand, the Mauritanian government has adopted a new energy strategy based on master plan and assessment tariffs and institutional studies. So the main lines of this program is growth of production capacity through national resources, renewable energy, gas, hydroelectricity, integration on larger scale of renewable energy in the national energy balance, with the target of 15% by 2015 and 20% in 2020. Development of solutions for isolated center and rural areas, and construction of HV and MV network to regroup generators and rationalize exploitation activity. So we already have 2 renewable projects that has been achieved now between 2030 and 2015. Solar PV plant, which was a gift from United Arab Emirates, and Nouakchott wind plant, which is founded by the Arab Fund of Economic and Social Development, SNIM, and Mauritanian government. We also have other projects that are being currently running. Hybrids of Kifa, 1.3 megawatts of PV and 5 megawatts of diesel. Nouakchott 30 megawatts PV plant founded by Arab Fund of Economic Social Development, and for the hybrid of Kifa is founded by AFD, Agence Française de Développement. And another project that is now on the stage of feasibility study, it's the power plant of 100 megawatt at Boulenoir. It's about 80 kilometers from Nouadhibou. So how we finance this project, usually the process is that the government get the funding from development partners, and it retrocedes the debts to Somelec, that is in charge of hiring the company to achieve the construction works and operating and maintenance also. To develop gaseous resources, Mauritania has set up gas to power project. The gas will be fed from the Banda field that is located about 55 kilometers offshore from Nouakchott to generate electricity. In the perspective of using Banda gas, 180 megawatts dual fuel thermal power plant has been already constructed, and also we plan to install 225 kilovolt transmission line from Nouakchott to Senegal and from Nouakchott to Nouadhibou to be able to supply the mining company, Tazias mainly, and SNIM in electricity. And also our ambition for by 2030 is to be an electricity exporter, to be sufficient, energy sufficient, and to be an energy supplier in Africa. So thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to talk about energy sector in Mauritania. Thank you very much.
So it's very impressive, I think, to see that the project, the pioneer project we will present now, driven by SNIM and in cooperation with Somelec, was issued in 2010 through tender, and seeing where we are, in 2015. The SNIM, as we said, is the main mining company of Mauritania, second iron ore producer in Africa. It is also the first employer after Mauritanian government in Mauritania. The activities are in Zouerat extraction, and they have their own railway, 700 kilometers to go to the port of Nouadhibou that they also manage for export. Part of the treatment is done in Zouerat, and part of the treatment is done directly in Nouadhibou, where the project takes place. Two words about Vergnet. Vergnet has been, first of all, a wind turbine manufacturer and EPC. Our main project was in Ethiopia, 120 megawatts. We have also an activity as an EPC and project developer or designer for PV plants. We provide solutions in photovoltaic, like water pumping, like a telecom mast. We have about 50 million people that have access to clean water in Africa thanks to manual or solar pumping. And eventually we have developed patents on hybrid solutions to this system where we were working for 25 years installing PV or wind. We are a little bit everywhere, but generally on weak grids, isolated remote places that need first of all to take into consideration the grid itself. The SNIM power plant in Nouadhibou was 4 diesel groups of 4 megawatts. A lot of loads that half the people here know better than me, but conveyors, crushers, etc. That everything had to be taken into account into the project. And there is a connection to the Somelec grid for providing electricity, or there is a connection line for the city of Nouadhibou, which is in charge, Somelec is in charge of providing electricity there. The site had very good conditions, excellent conditions in terms of wind. For specialists, we are above 3,500 hours, equivalent hours. The problem is corrosion, salted area, sand. The tender was issued in 2010 and we won this tender, installing 16 wind turbines of medium power that have the particularity of being installed and maintained on ground. This allows us, for example, to clean the sand that is accumulating on the blades. The hybrid system itself, let's imagine we can put PV, wind, in this case only wind. We will have a monitoring of the grid. Then having the controller that will, in real time, check that all safety margins are ensured on the project, that you have no problems of reliability. We have the possibility to control and to limit, for example, the wind output or the PV plant output. For Nouadhibou, in this case it was a tender, there was no choice, so the preliminary assessment of the energy mix, the cost-effective mix, was not done by us but by consultant Valorem and SNIM, as we saw, but we are able to do the preliminary assessment and cost assessments. Here we are talking about all the technical things that we check on the grid to be sure that we will have reliability. This comes from steady state to all the transient phases like failures, etc. And eventually the quality, the power quality also. Because for us, once the choice has been made on a cost basis, grid stability and power quality is the main driver. For mining company, it is the main point. If we see the example of the analysis between the theory of how much wind we could inject into the grid, but when we see, so we have 3 groups and an emergency group in this case, but when we take into account all the safety margins, all the failures that can occur, we will see that some cases where we thought that we could put 100% of the wind on the grid are putting at risk the grid of Nouadhibou, or even are impossible with negative safety margins. This is very important in our consideration between high penetration on a theoretical basis and what we can really achieve with all reliability. What we wanted also to show with this example was having at least 2 years of track record and being able to show you the actual results of penetration in this case. We see at the beginning in 2013 the learning curve, and then after this learning curve we are averagely 30% of penetration of renewables. In terms of figures, we have very, very good wind, possibility in that moment to have 30% of penetration of wind, corresponding to a high diesel savings, and of course pollution savings for environmental aspects. And very important as well is that this investment, an easy figure to remember is that one turbine is paid in 3 months on this project. There are 16 of them. I talk a little bit about financing, but it's one of the aims of this conference, these 2 days. In this case, there was no discussion about co-financing, about PPA, or even swaps. We have cases in Russia where we have swaps of oil against hybrid solution. But in this case, SNEAM 100% financed the project. Their main goal basically is to ensure their autonomy and be sure they can control the grid. They gave me example of what happens with a failure of 5 minutes. In some cases, it's 1 day lost. There are discussions and they are finalizing agreement between SNEAM and Somelec to provide electricity from SNEAM to the city of Nouadhibou, which will allow the wind to become a base load and use always 100% of it. So if we take this example for mining companies, apart from the financial aspects, the cost-effective aspects, of course, as a conclusion, we have, and this can be done in the feasibility phase, we will have to keep in mind the grid stability. If, in this case in Nouadhibou, we had some measurements on site for a month to be sure that we had everything under control. Wind assessment, PV assessment is easier, but beyond the assessment of the resource, you have also to consider the other aspects. Do we have the possibility to use that technology in that place? Nouadhibou, for example, is a very, very demanding place, hot, sand, etc. There can be, and we would recommend, a step-by-step approach in order to have good results, immediate results like that, and then see what can be done for a higher penetration, but higher investment or so. Let's keep flexibility in mind. We see the case in Mauritania where things are changing. The consumption of steam is improving, so they are developing projects of wind and solar in Rivard in complement. We see that the infrastructure of Mauritania are changing as well, so there will be changes in the future. And in Africa, this is key also. Maybe not in South Africa, but a lot of places, we have to be sure that you will be able to maintain during the lifetime of your project the facility. This would be my conclusion, and if there is any question, I am open to answer it.